Hello, 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 hello. It's your boy, Alister. Just kidding. I don't talk like that. Hi everyone, I'm Alister Felix. Welcome back to my channel where I'm on a quest to find joy through creativity. And as you can see, I'm doing things a little differently in this video. I wanted to be a little more personal, mainly because this month is the 3rd anniversary of my children's book series. I can't believe it's been 3 years already. And I thought what a great way to celebrate is to answer some of the questions that some of you might have on my whole self-publishing journey. I'm hoping this video inspires you to do something similar, potentially self-publish your own books, and hoping to inspire you to make that happen. I asked for some questions on my socials. I got a lot of questions, and I'm really thankful and grateful that people are actually curious about my journey and just interested in hearing about my story. I tried my best to categorize them into 3 to 4 categories, and we're just going to start off with the motivation, inspiration behind the children's book series, some challenges, lessons, and some wins and some not so wins, and then questions about self-publishing in general, and then let's just call them fun questions in the end. So stick around to the end to see what those answers are. Let's jump right into it. The first question I got a lot of was, what inspired you to write your book? It's actually a very long story. I did an earlier video about it. I'll put it somewhere here where you can go and watch it, where I had a video where I interviewed myself. It has a little more deeper story behind it, but the main inspiration is a core memory where I have with my family. And every Saturday, back when I used to live in Hong Kong when I was much younger, our whole family would have dim sum together. My grandparents would go a little earlier to get that dim sum discount if you show up in the morning, but then they would just stay there and basically reserve the table. But that typically was the routine every Saturday. But it was also mainly because I felt like growing up I didn't have a children's book that really spoke to my culture. So I wanted to create something for my child self, and my children's book series was born. I knew I wanted some Cantonese in it, and growing up I always felt like I needed to hide my Asianness in a sense, so I purposely didn't want to speak Cantonese. I do regret it now, but I feel like growing up, like trying to assimilate into the culture, where I kind of lost a lot of my cultural self. But I felt like this book was like a reclamation of my cultural identity. I also wanted to add a little Cantonese words in it. It's also for me to relearn Cantonese, but it also teaches the dim sum time mannerisms and then how you would order food. Also, I feel like dim sum is such a great entry level for people who have never tried dim sum in general and want to try something a little different. You can go get dim sum. You can literally bring my book to order my favorite dim sum dishes. And I also feel like the world of dim sum is very interesting and special. The dim sum ladies coming to your table trying to get you to pick food. It does get really overwhelming, and I just thought such a fun environment to be in. Overwhelming, but fun and delicious. Next, we have, who is the main character? Is it you? Oh, it's definitely me. Because I self-published, I was able to create this character based on myself. I sent a lot of kid photos of myself to my illustrator, and I wanted to make sure that I did have this bowl haircut because I actually did grow up with this bowl haircut. I'll post a photo here. But it was very heavily inspired by that, and I think one of the most important thing was also I wanted the character to be very gender neutral, so a young boy or young girl could really see themselves having dim sum in this restaurant. Well, why did I pick those 3 dim sum items? I don't know if this is a real thing, but I call it the big 3 dim sum items. I felt like every time you go order dim sum, there's those 3 main dishes that I think are the staples of dim sum. So the top 3 that are in my first book is ha gao, siu mai, cha siu bao, which are shrimp dumplings, the pork dumplings, and then barbecue pork steamed buns. And I felt like those are the three staples that you like must have at every dim sum restaurant. Maybe I'm biased because they're also my favorite. And I think when you start going to a lot of dim sum restaurants, if a restaurant can nail a really good shrimp dumpling or a really good barbecue pork buns, you know the place is legit. All right, next we can talk about some wins and some challenges. The biggest thing that has happened in these 3 years, there were several things. Like when I first published my first book, I didn't expect the overwhelming support. I'll go into this probably a little bit later in the publishing section, but I originally wanted to try doing traditional publishing, and I did face a lot of rejection saying that there's no market for this and there's no one that would want to read this. I'm tired of this rejection. I'm just going to do this by myself. And because of that, when I officially launched my first book, I didn't expect the overwhelming support that I got from my community, and just I remember posting it all over my socials and just like tons of people commenting, wanting to support me, but also just like, I wish I had this book as a kid. And reading all those comments, seeing all the support and encouragement that I got completely changed my life, because a bunch of people saying that no one wants to read this, there's no market for this. But then when I did it myself, suddenly I was seeing tons of people who are interested in this and who want to support me. And there is a market for this. I think that was just such a eye-opening experience for me. Sometimes self-publishing can be rewarding, but can be hard. What's the most exciting thing that happened? I think one of the coolest thing that has ever happened was, well, there's a few things. My book was featured on a TV show in Canada, which is really cool. I was featured on Times Square and also was able to do a lot of talks in different tech companies and reading to kids. I thought that was really cool. I think this was early 2021, and I did a lot of virtual readings, some coffee shop and some bookstore readings as well. So that, I think I never would have imagined that I would be doing that. I just thought this book was a love letter to my child self, but also was able to spread that love to the community, which was very exciting. I guess another win would just be seeing my book in large retailers. I was able to see my book in Barnes & Noble's, Target, even some bigger bookstores in Canada. My favorite win is there is a local bookstore that I go to around me, and I go pretty often, and just being able to see my book there has been such a crazy experience of just like, I think when I was younger, just always imagining like, oh, it'd be so cool to have a book in a bookstore, and it happened. What's one thing you learned from this journey? One thing that I didn't realize was, because you are self-publishing, you do have to do everything yourself, and that's just not just the creation of the book, but also when you launch your book, you have to be very focused on the business side of your book. All right, let's talk a little bit about my self-publishing journey. I'll probably do another video on how to self-publish in more detail. Did not have any prior experience in publishing. I just watched a lot of YouTube videos and just did a lot of research on the best way to self-publish. How did you find an illustrator? Oh, I actually went through Instagram. Maybe I was just lucky, but if you really just search on Instagram Illustrator, you just get a bunch of accounts, and you do really have to go through every account to check what style of illustration you would want and if it matches your story. I went through a lot of interviews, just making sure that I can work well with them. I did also check out a lot of those freelance websites. There's like Fiverr, Upwork as well. Those do have pretty good illustrators, but I just went through Instagram, and that's how I found my illustrator. Shout out to Yenna. She did such a great job with my book series. Next we have, let's see, any advice for starting self-publishing? I think the best advice is figuring out what story you want to tell. I think a great way to see what's out there is actually going to a bookstore and really looking through the children's book section. You can start getting a feel for the different stories there are, but even how each book is created, like in terms of story-wise, but also getting a feel for the dimensions of the book you would like, and also feeling the paper. I think paperweight is really interesting. Also the different formats. There's like paperbacks, hardcovers. There's a lot of really cool children's books out there. I forgot what there's one, what was called, but it has like a trifold and like some of them have like pop-ups. It's really cool just to see what's out there to use for inspiration. But I think the most important one is just write your story first. I think it's really easy to get caught up on what the book would actually look like and not focus on finishing your story first. I think once you start writing your book and actually have a draft, that's like such a great foundation to build off of what your book can actually look like. All right, let's talk about future plans. Are you planning to write more children's books? I get this question a lot. I think the answer is like yes and no. I do have a lot of ideas that I want to continue writing for a children's book series. I do want to continue telling what Asian stories can be and make it more accessible. But on top of that, I do want to start branching out a little bit and potentially get into graphic novels or even writing a novel. And that sounds really exciting to me. And I never thought that this children's book series would provide me a label of author, which is just like such a weird thing for me. Because I think growing up, I've always struggled with writing in school, feeling like I might pivot a little bit and work a little differently in terms of mediums and writing in general, but I'll say maybe. That was a very long-winded maybe. All right, got all the serious questions away, I guess. I think that was pretty important, but if you have any more questions, definitely leave a question in the comments and I'll do a part 2 if everyone is curious. But yeah, let's move on to the fun and personal questions. One I got, let's see, what's been the most memorable feedback you've received from a reader? This is actually my favorite review that I've ever gotten. And I guess my friend's daughter loved the book so much that she took a bite out of the book and some of the pages. It's funny to me because it is a food book that I guess it encouraged kids to try dim sum, but I was like, please don't eat my book and let me send you another copy. Because that's just the most hilarious review I've ever gotten. Are there any Easter eggs in the book? There's a lot of Easter eggs, actually. I think that's one cool thing about self-publishing is that you really get to art direct. You really get to work with the illustrator to put in things that you may not get to, in a sense, with traditional publishing. I mentioned it before, but you know, the character is based off of me. The outfit in the first book and the outfit in the second book are actually inspired by different photos I've sent into my illustrator. I think in the last spread of my first book, there's actually my whole family. I'll maybe post it here, but it's like a full shot of a restaurant, and there's actually my different siblings and my mom in the whole spread, which is really cool. And then my second book, there's like a little painting of my dog. What did your family think of your book? Typical fashion, when I told my mom and gave her a copy of it, she was like very judgmental of like, this doesn't look like shrimp dumplings. Your Cantonese pronunciation is wrong. She just does it out of love. It's just funny. Even when I told her that she's in one of the spreads, she's just like, that's not me. My hair doesn't look like that. It's just funny, but I think she does it out of love. But I did show her the second book and she was very supportive. And now that she talks about it all the time with her friends, and it's just such a funny thing that goes back to the core dim sum memory. And then now when we do have dim sum with some of her friends, that's like one thing my mom would bring up to her friends of like, oh, by the way, he's also an author, and then being like, make sure you give them free copies. I hope you enjoyed this more personal video, and thank you for the constant support and encouragement throughout this journey. Can't wait to see what the next years will be like. More books, hopefully, more content, more joy through creativity. And definitely, if you have more questions for me, leave them in the comments, and remember to subscribe. See you in the next one. Bye.